This episode is brought to you by Trailer Park Yard Games, where over 28 games are delivered directly to your party. We park the trailer, you party.
You know, put your seatbelt on. Put the seatbelt on.
Right. Mine at first it starts as like a calm, like beep, beep.
Not all of us drive Lexuses.
Beep, 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 beep.
More and more
It's
annoying.
like, okay, fine. I'll
It gets more and more Indian as it yells at you.
Put your seatbelt on. No.
My navigation actually has a...
Let's have a chat, talk this and that with PB and Jaisy.
All right. It is the PB and Jaisy show. It's kind of, again, a remix. We've got Michael Padgett today with us.
Hello.
Once again. And Bill is okay. As of the recording of this message, Bill is okay.
We will update you all on how he's doing.
We'll keep you posted. Yes. And then to my right, I have
Jaisy George. Here I am.
All right. And our guest today is Michele, also with one L. The other Michele we had on was with one L. Michele likes to say no hell in Michele. And some of our topics that we talk about are going to be a little heavier than others. This is one that I feel like some people might avoid, but I want to bring it to the table just for awareness. And that's what all this is about, is being aware and being aware of what other people have gone through, how we can help, and what that looks like. So today I have Michele Terry. If you want to tell a little bit about yourself, and then we're going to talk about Mika.
Yeah. So again, my name's Michele Terry, and professionally, I'm a nurse manager. And I've been
She's a boss, babe.
I am. Sometimes that's a good thing, and not so much. But, I've been married for 25 years. I have
to the same person.
Yeah,
that's a lot.
It's if you even you'll need
I know.
Yeah, I have a Mikey too.
It's rough.
How long have y'all been married?
Go ahead, Sarah.
We got married in 07, so
okay.
do the math.
She's not very good at math.
Wow.
At 15 years?
You're like, please do the math.
Oh, no,
Tell
please.
me.
But yeah, we have 3 beautiful children. We have Madison, who actually is about to start her career in nursing as well. So I'm proud of that. She's about to be 24, and Macy just yesterday turned 20, and she's down in San Marcos at Texas State, living her best life.
Yeah.
Good for her. Who knows what she wants to be? She says a lawyer. We'll see.
She'll
if that
figure it
works
out. Yeah.
And then of course Mika, who is
Who we're talking
the
about
star
today.
of the day, and she's our daughter who passed away in 2005 at 6 months after being forgotten in a hot car. So that's what I like to do, is honor her memory.
For sure.
And raise awareness so that it doesn't happen to someone else. So she would have been 17 this past December. So it's been a long time.
Wow. So I've got, and this is where my mind goes too. Like, you always would have to wonder, like, what would she look like? What would she be into?
Every day.
Would she look like me? Would she look like her dad?
Yeah.
Would she look like her sisters?
Yes, and just the dynamics of our family, how they'd be totally different, because we're empty nesters now, and if Mika was here, we'd still be into those high school sports.
You've been to the thick of it.
Yeah. So
3 girls.
Yeah.
Wow.
Exactly.
So tell us a little bit about Mika, and as much of the story you want to tell, but we want to know what happened and how that, kind of what life looks like after that. Mm-hmm. So
2005, January 23rd, was a normal day. I say that. It was a little out of our routine, which historically, if you look at these stories, that seems to be a constant factor. Is typically I would take the kids to daycare and work, and my husband was the routine to pick them up. That day, he had been laid off from work, I don't know, a week or so before. I had to be at work super early, and so it just makes sense for him to take the kids.
Sure.
So our oldest was away at church camp, so it was just the middle and the youngest, and unusually so. Usually I took Mika to daycare, and she was asleep. I'm like, had her first bottle at the daycare.
Yeah.
She was a great sleeper, like my best. So unusually before I left that morning at 6 o'clock, she was awake, cranky, whatever. So I gave her a bottle, went on my way, and said, hey, get the baby up. He left town, and of course, since she had been up several hours, she'd get in the car seat, go to sleep, right? So the daycares it's the same daycare, but they were 2 or 3 blocks apart. So he dropped our middle, Macy, off, and went to go take Mika to her daycare, and the road was blocked, so we had to take a different route. And he got a phone call about a potential job, so he was distracted. Again, a common theme with these accidents. And instead of, going back to the road to take her, he just went off to his day job, which he had gotten hired to do some construction out at a local church, and she was asleep. So he went in and worked, and at some point, him and another friend of his left to go get some supplies, and for some reason on the way back, we had arranged a babysitter. My sister was coming in town. We were supposed to have kind of an adult night. It was a Thursday night, and for some reason, he just remembered that she was in his
Just
truck
dawned on him.
because they took the other gentleman's truck. So, frantically, he made some phone calls and things like that, and so. Needless to say, it was June, Texas. Statistics say that a hot car, every 10 minutes, the temperature in your car raises 10 degrees.
Wow.
So it doesn't
it's
take
quick.
long. Yeah. It can happen in 60, 70 degree weather. I mean, that day it was, not as hot as it could be in June, 92 or something. And she was in there for about 4 hours.
Oh, wow. My God.
So, that day changed our lives forever. I
can
mean,
imagine,
obviously.
Yeah.
So you're at work, and do you get a phone call?
I do.
From your husband, or?
No, actually from my sister, because she was already in town about noon or 1 that day. I don't remember exactly the right time, and my husband Mikey had tried to call her because he knew she was close, and she was one of the first ones on the scene. I would say that probably changed her life as well.
Oh,
She doesn't talk about it much, but my sister just called and said, you need to come home. And I'm like, why? Why? She's like, you need to come home right now. I was like, you tell me why.
Right.
And then she said Mikey left Mike in the car. And at that time, I was not a nurse. I've always been medically inclined, but I knew what I knew what that meant.
Right.
I mean, there's just no way. Babies in general don't regulate their heat or their temperature as well. So it just... I knew, and so one of my coworkers drove me. I was actually in Midlothian, working in Midlothian at the time. Drove me home to Maypearl, and they were still there. That was a little. They're like working on her, and I'm like, what? What do you mean? When my husband did get there, so we had my sister and another friend of ours that were first on the scene. They didn't know what to do. When my husband got there, he immediately took her out of the car seat, took her into the church, and tried to do what he could do. But we followed the ambulance. I think even when we got to the hospital in Waxahachie, they were like, you're following too close. I'm like, that's my daughter.
Right. Yeah, there's no such thing as too close.
They're not going very fast. They're going slow. And I'm like, what are they doing? So we were able to go back with her. And of course, she was gone. They continued to work on her. And when I think back, I asked, what are y'all doing? Because if for some reason they had saved her, what would her life have been like?
Have been like,
And so as a mom, I've had some guilt about that. However, now that I am in the medical field, I know that was, the right thing to do. So they allowed us to have time with her. And then thank God for our community, family, friends. It was a difficult time. They would not allow my husband to spend the night and stay with us because CPS was called.
I was going to say, because there's a whole aspect to that of,
the legal.
Right. And just everyone always makes sure that it was an accident. And
Sure.
that they're, so on top of your grief and all the stuff you're dealing with, then you have this questioning. So, and I know anytime, because I've talked about the story before, and then just hearing y'all's story for the first time, the first question everyone asks is, are you still married?
Yeah.
You know? And so that, I cannot imagine that dynamic. So how did you guys work through that?
So it was not easy. The thing is if you know Mikey, you know his heart.
For sure.
He's a lover, and I've always had jobs that required me to work later than usual. I can't even count the times on my hands how many times I helped the girl with homework. I mean, he was the one who bathed the girls. He's the one who got them to bed. He was just a great father.
Yeah.
And there was no doubt in your mind how much he loved you.
Yeah. There was no doubt that it was an accident. I'm also not a person that places blame. So I get that all the time. I don't understand how you don't blame him. And I was like, first of all, I love him. He loves our children. If you could have seen him and the grief that he lived in for a very long time.
Sure.
And I mean, he still lives that way to this day.
Well, your mind always goes, what if, or what if, or
Right.
like you said, what if my schedule was different, or if I
didn't
was
have
the
to go to
one,
work early that
or
day.
Oh yeah,
And
and there's that's the funny thing is like I'd given him formula and we were out of formula. If I don't know, if there's lots of
Yeah, you
things
said
that
you-
could have
If I didn't
transpired.
give him formula, then maybe she wouldn't have
Yeah.
been crying. He would have known. But
Right.
Right.
it
Yeah.
always goes back to something. What
For
if,
sure.
What if, sure, yeah.
And it just never crossed my mind because I even talked to him that day, and never crossed my mind to ask him, "Did you drop the kids off?" Well, no. So yes, we're still married. His grief was, we just grieved differently, I guess you could say. As a mom and as a woman, I think I talk about things. He internalizes things. I just wanted comfort from him. He didn't feel worthy of comforting me because it was his fault, right?
Gotcha.
So it was rough. I will say we just lived. We just kind of had to. We had 2 girls.
Right. The other girls, you had to be there for them too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Difficult. Macy was 3 at the time. She doesn't recall much. Madison was 7. She recalls a lot, and she surprisingly even felt ill to say, if I was home, if I wasn't at church camp, I could have made sure
She
it
would have
didn't
been
happen.
there or something. And
And as a 7-year-old, how do you?
That's a lot.
Yeah,
That's a
so-
hard thing to carry too.
Right, but he was under legal investigation. He was taken to a grand jury trial.
Wow.
And his thought was, hey, he put me in jail. I mean, you can't do anything worse that I'm doing to myself right
Exactly.
now. And I'm like,
Yeah.
no, you've got to care. And he's like, I don't care what
There's
they do.
other girl.
Yeah.
You've got 2 other daughters that need you.
Exactly.
Like you said, he's got such a big heart. He's in that moment, he's probably feeling helpless. Like he can't do anything.
Right.
So like he's already done something that he can't do anything about, and he
Right.
can't, there's no way to make it right in his mind. Except for they always say time heals all wounds. Well, it doesn't heal them completely, but it
No.
does help.
Right.
But I know Mikey, and he's always been that guy to where I could see him just
Yes.
Beating
beating
himself
himself up, putting the blame on him and nobody
Right.
else. It's just him, and it's just.
Well, I think
I'm
the
sure
other
it's tough.
the other place that everyone's
both
brain
y'all.
goes is I would never do that.
Never.
Oh no.
And
Yeah,
I think,
you
and
can't say that.
I think there's I think people really feel like, oh, I could never do
Sure.
that. But, like you said, the statistics are there when your pattern is different or you're stressed or,
Right.
you've got a baby. So you've got a lot going on in your life and other
Sure.
children. And so talk a little bit about that. I heard you mention the statistics quite a bit. So what does that look like when this happens? What normally is the scenario?
So yeah, when this happened to us, I was like, what? And I had heard about it over the news. I remember there was one in Euless several years before, and I was like, oh my! I mean, the same thing. How
How
do
could
you
you
do
do
that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Until it happens to someone you know, someone you love, then you're like, oh, I get it. I see. And the statistics are basically an average of 39 children in the United States die from unknowingly being left in the car. There's a difference. There's a difference. Knowing you're leaving your child to go run an errand, to go run into Walmart, that's different.
So that happens too.
It does happen. It absolutely does. And I'm not placing any type of blame or shame on those parents either. It's probably a matter of being uneducated.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah.
Exactly.
because think about it, when you have other kids, a car seat, everything else, I'm just going to run right in here.
Yeah.
Don't realize that it's going to take you longer than it does.
Or like you said,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
70 degrees outside,
Yeah.
but how quickly
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
car
my
getting
mom
the
left
cars
me in the
go
car
on.
when she'd go run errands all
Sure.
the time. Back in the day, it was
absolutely.
common.
Creak the
Right.
window open.
Yeah, you're fine.
Yeah.
Until I got up in the front seat and pulled the
Well, and
handle
so
down
that-
rolled back down in the driveway.
That's another thing is Kids in Cars is the organization, kidsincars.org, because there are some other organizations out there, is focused on raising awareness of dangers of children in and around cars. You have backovers. You don't know your child is back out, has gotten out of the front of the house, and dad's leaving for work. And so power windows, There's lots of things, or putting the car in gear. So there's lots of things that they raise awareness about. And so when it happened, my thing was I gotta know about this. And so I started doing research, and that's how I got in touch with Jeanette with Kids in Cars. And her story is really interesting too. She developed it because she was actually kidnapped and thrown in the trunk of a car, and wasn't able to get out. And this was years ago. And she's actually the one that developed the
glow in the dark,
the release of the trunk, so that if you are ever caught in the trunk, you can pull that. So through her research, she found out, hey, there's all these other things that are dangerous for people, and especially children in and around cars. So statistically, it is someone that is distracted, someone that is out of their routine. How many times I think there's been near misses. People drive to work and start to get out and realize, hey, oh my gosh, because you're on autopilot.
Right.
And we are under a lot of stress. Our sleep habits aren't good, especially when there's a baby in the house.
Right.
So it's that unknowing piece that we try to say, don't think it can't happen to you.
Right.
And so we have, once Mikey was released from the grand jury, they deemed it an accident. So luckily we had to testify at the grand jury, and he had so much support from friends, our pastor, people that could speak to his person,
Sure.
Then at that point is when we felt I was free to speak out and just say, at the very least, don't let her death be in vain.
Yeah. Right.
And so that's when I got hooked up with Kids in Cars. And we have some awesome friends that said, hey, we want to do a concert in Micah's name. We want to do something, I know, something to help. And you can keep the money, you can do whatever you want to, but this is what we're doing. So that was actually October after she passed. And we had our first music for Micah. And we had it at some land out there in Maypro where we live that our friends graciously donated. And it was a real small event. We had musicians donate their time, and we just charged a donation at the door.
And y'all did that for quite a few years, right?
Until 2011.
Okay.
Yeah. And we raised well over $150,000 over those several years.
That's awesome.
For Kids in Cars.
Yeah.
Additionally, we do a scholarship in Micah's name at Mikey's high school where he graduated, which was Maypro, and also one in mine, which is Grosbeck. So we try to honor her memory every year that way. I guess I would say we stopped. It got a little. It was almost a full-time job for me. I'm just going to be honest.
It's kind of the
We had a
same exact
podcast,
thing that.
So we had Michael Limley was on. It'll be a few weeks ago when you are hearing this, but they started Maddie's Promise. He had lost an infant right after birth, and so they kind of the same thing. He said it was great at first, and we had all these events, and then it became bigger, and it became more than what we could handle. You know,
I mean, the last music for Micah wasn't probably our highest grossing, but I think the year before was, where we raised $38,000 in one night.
That's awesome.
wow.
But we had sponsors, we had vendors that would come out.
Somebody famous in your family that came out and sang?
Well,
Who?
so Bart
Crow.
Crow was our highlight. I mean,
Yeah.
he was our headliner, I should say, and he was part of our friend group that was
For sure,
number one to say, we're doing this. What can I do?
Yeah,
So
he's good.
Great.
he's a great dude.
Yeah.
And so we, it got to be where afterwards I was trying to make sure everybody got their donation for their taxes. And then once we got through that the first year, then it's time for me to start organizing
planning for the next
again.
one.
Right.
And in early 2012, my husband was diagnosed with cancer. So at that point, I was like, I've got
do
to
both.
focus on him.
Right.
So it kind of just happened that way, and we just haven't. We have people all the time ask, when are y'all going to do that again?
Yeah.
Even our kids, because our kids were young, and we had face
now it's
painting
time
and
for you to do
They're
it.
helping in their own special way.
right. But they were like,
so
we
that
used to
it's-
have a great time as
much
kids.
fun.
Why don't we do that anymore? And I'm like, well,
We can do it. You take care of everything.
Now they're old enough; they should start a
And I
backup.
don't want to make it sound like I didn't
Girls.
have help, because I absolutely
Right,
did.
yeah.
Right.
But
It's still a lot.
I I don't delegate very well.
Yeah.
You're a boss babe.
Boss babe.
I don't. So it was like, no. I need to do that. No.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're not doing it right. Let me.
You can just go ask
forget it.
for, raffle items and things like
Right,
that. So
right.
Yeah.
I just felt like that paperwork piece of it and all the ins and outs I had to deal with. So it was a lot on me, and not that I couldn't have passed it off and it would have still been success. But
Yeah. I'm that way too, though.
Yeah.
I have a hard time with that.
Yeah, she does.
That's so awesome, though, that you guys were able to, do so much in her name. And I think as a parent, it's easy to, before you become a parent, to be like, oh, I would never do that. I remember like before I had kids being like, oh, I would never like yell at my kids. I don't think I'm going to do
yeah.
this or that. I'm not going to do big birthday parties and stuff like that. And no, like once
Yeah.
you're actually a parent, it's easy the things that you can forget or overlook, or there's so many little mistakes we all make like as true accidents. It's just there are some that
Right.
later have bigger
Consequences.
consequences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and talk a little bit about what you guys got done, because you talked about the safety items in the car, and I know there was a pretty big one that started showing up. I don't know when that all happened, but
that's what we, our friend Michelle, myself, my mom, we went to Washington to lobby because Kids in Cars was trying to pass a bill that made it mandatory to put a reminder, some sort of weight sensor reminder in the back seat. I went and talked to Joe Barton. I did my due diligence, and they're like, heartbreakingly so, it's like, it's not our job to remind you that your kid's in the back seat. I said, but it's not your job to remind me to put my seatbelt on either. But guess what?
you do.
That's a feature.
That's true.
That is there.
Right.
It's not your keys, for goodness sake.
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
you're talking about a life. So
Yeah.
no, while it's not your job, but it's a safety feature. It's a car. We know it's happening.
Right.
We know that parents unknowingly do it. So if it's gonna, you can ignore that too. I mean, you can ignore that button, or that signal. So they never got it mandated. However, GM, Chevrolet picked it up really quick. And now it is a lot more standard in the cars today.
That's I've seen it in a couple of our rental cars, I think. I don't think my car...
I've got it in my Ford.
It's in it's in the Tahoes. It was in my Tahoe. It was like
But it has to be weight in the back.
no, actually,
It just does it.
it's if you open your car, put groceries in the back seat, close it, get in, it recognizes that you opened your door. Like,
Oh,
and so
gotcha,
it doesn't do it all the time, because if you just get in the driver's seat and go on, it knows
Gotcha.
there was nothing. So it's
Oh, that's smart.
yeah, it's I know I don't have a Tahoe now, but I did, and it was a feature there. Fords, but
Yeah, I think your Tahoe's just. I think it
Probably
happened-
too old.
2017 is when they started putting that in, right? Something like
maybe.
that. And yours is 16. So
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But it's taken years and years of that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
But like all the other warnings that we get, like, oh, your coffee's hot.
Yeah.
Like, why is that such a hard
you
thing
left
to
your
think
door
of?
open, or
Right.
just
right.
But that's a great argument, because it does, in seatbelts, while they'll get you a ticket for not wearing one, you really, it's
Right.
like you
Yeah,
said,
it
it's
means that you the whole time, you
Sure.
do it.
Oh, yeah.
Put your seatbelt on. Put seatbelt on.
Right.
Put seatbelt on.
Mine
Put
it
seatbelt
gets,
on.
at first it starts so it's like a calm, like beep, beep,
Not all of us drive
beep,
Lexuses.
beep,
It
beep,
gets
beep, beep.
more and more
It's like,
annoying.
okay, fine, I'll
it gets
put it
more
on.
it gets
Yeah.
more and more Indian
Yes,
as it yells at you.
Put it on.
Put your seatbelt on. No.
Put it on. My
That's funny.
navigation actually has a thing where like you can customize it where it'll say like your kid's name, like don't forget, Xander.
Awesome.
So I put a little emoji after it, and so it's like you can change the skin tone on the emoji.
Right.
So it reads the emoji, so it says, "Don't forget Xander, baby, medium skin tone."
Yes.
So it actually gives me a description of the child.
There you go.
Goes
Yeah.
a step further.
Well, so do you guys have any ideas or, thought of bringing that back at all? Or are you guys just kind of hopping on more with the Kids in Cars and awareness, or what's your plan for the future there?
That's a great question. We have kicked that around, maybe on a I don't know, golf tournament, doing something a little different. However, we just went to y'all's charitable golf tournament. It's like, this still this.
It's a lot of work.
And it's not that I'm trying to not work, but it is, just
It's a labor of love.
Yes,
for
and
sure.
And so I don't know how to do it on a smaller level.
Gotcha.
So we have definitely discussed it, and at some point, because we donated some money, and then we have a little pile over here that is for our scholarships and things like that. We're running out.
Gotcha.
I would be honest. So Micah would be a senior next year, and honestly, to the T, once her senior year would have been, that's when we're going to have to figure something out. Yeah. I will say that, and I know we're running close to time, but one of the questions y'all emailed me was, what would you wish you knew now,
For sure.
And I think a lot of people would expect me to say that this event was going to happen in my life. This event changed our life in so many ways, but it also surprisingly has made it better. You make choices, and at that point it's like life's too short. I don't know, in our younger days with us struggling with 3 kids and everything else, that I would have ever pushed myself to do something different with my career. I mean, she's the reason I'm a nurse now. She's the reason. Awesome. She's the reason that I said, okay, make a difference in whatever way you can, but also in my life. And it has made a huge difference for us financially, just to have a career that I will always have a career.
Right.
And so had that not happened, I don't know that I would have pushed to go to school. I would have pushed to say, I'm going to do something different and not just, find the job that,
For sure, yeah. Just go with the flow.
Yeah.
Well, the words I think of is grace. You telling the story about Mikey, like what grace it took, because no one would have blamed you to act differently, and you did make the choice to give him the grace and the love, and to, and I think that's awesome, and I'm sure he'll remember that for the rest of his life.
Right. One of the statements CPS made to us that day, the day she passed, is, marriage, like 89% of marriages don't make it after this.
Oh, you're like,
after
thanks.
thanks
for that.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, you just
Hey, that's a challenge.
accepted.
I'm gonna show you.
So you're not,
So it's like, that's the real reason we're still. We just wanted to prove CPS
Like we
wrong.
want,
I mean, come on, but who says that?
Yeah, I know.
What
Especially at a
did you
time
have?
like that.
Yes. So, but another thing is that our girls are getting older, and you hope that they find someone that they can love unconditionally, or that loves them in that term. And from a good note, my daughter texted me a few weeks ago and just said, "I just want you to know that thank you for giving me the example of what a marriage and what love is supposed to look like." And I'm like, "Oh, I've succeeded.
You've done it. Yeah.
The ultimate goal for a mom.
Right. I said, that's
especially
all I
having
ever
a daughter.
want is someone to love you like you deserve to be loved."
Right.
So,
That's strong.
That is
the
awesome.
strength
That's
out there
beautiful.
between both of y'all and the kids.
Right.
That's really, really inspiring. I mean, like you said, it came out of a bad situation,
exactly.
but it made it go, and I mean, it made your lives, like you said,
yeah.
almost better. Not better, but
She's molded
You
us.
saw
just
life
molded you
differently.
into a great life. Yeah.
Right.
Made you take risks that you wouldn't have normally taken.
Right.
And
Oh,
that's-
Michael just ripped my headphone out.
It's all right.
I forgive you though, because I love you unconditionally. So we do have a short little Tales from Lockbox, Michael.
Tales from the Lockbox.
Oh, Lord.
So,
Can't wait.
this is my short little thing. This involves a kid and a car. I just wanted to remind y'all of a very viral clip that was from way
This
back.
one turned out really
way back in the day.
funny.
There was this boy that, hopefully Tom can insert this clip somewhere. He stole his grandmother's car, and he was probably like 10 years old. The cops catch him, they pull him over, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, this is like a little kid driving this car." The news is like interviewing, and his grandma's like, "I don't know why he stole my car. He's a bad kid." And they interview him, and the interviewer's like, "Why? What compelled you to steal this car? Why would you do that?" And he says, "I just want to do hood rat stuff with my friends."
That was a good one. And then Michael has a level up for us too.
Yeah, so I would challenge y'all, if you don't, it doesn't matter what year your vehicle is, check, see if you have that feature in your vehicle, turn it on.
For sure.
Because you don't know when you're going to pick up somebody else's kid or anything else like that. If you don't have it, write a little note card out. And if you have kids, put it on your dashboard or something like that. Something to remind you, just to always be aware, and to spread awareness too. Make sure that all the other families know that it's a situation that nobody should go through, but it does happen. So just I challenge you to
They
try to bring awareness to yourself and others.
They
Yes, and
say
it,
to put your briefcase in the back seat. Put
Oh,
your,
yeah.
your
so you
cell
have to
phone
get
in
it.
the back seat.
that's good.
Take
Yeah.
a
Good
shoe
idea.
off. Put one shoe in
Yeah.
the back
That's
seat
good.
so
That's
that
a
you
good
have to
idea.
open up
very
that
smart.
back seat.
If
Yeah.
you have Waze, there is a setting in Waze, Waze navigation to
Do that as
add a child alert system.
That's
awesome.
WAZ.
Good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Michelle.
thanks
We
for having
appreciate
me.
Thank you so
we
much.
appreciate you sharing so openly.
Truly inspiring.
Yes.
Your strength is so admirable.
Both of y'all.
Resiliency
Yes.
for sure too.
Awesome.
Thank you all for listening. Please go to kidsandcars.org. If anything comes of the charity and we add that in, we will let y'all know. With that,
Like, subscribe, check us out.
yep, we out.
Bye.
Bye.
Just had a chat, talk this and that with PB